How would you define intuition as someone that doesn't know how to trust it yet?
I would define intuition as that 7-year-old kid inside of you. Every single one of us knows how to trust it. The problem, Aaron, is most of us are taught how to ignore it.
I love the idea of making no a more common practice. I do think that the further you grow and the more you are responsible for, that has to become the biggest word in your vocabulary, or the most common word in your vocabulary. What's up, everyone? I'm here with Matt King. It's a very special day today to have him on the podcast. Matt, I think you were one of the first, when I first put this out and was like, hey, who's willing to jump on? You were one of the first to respond. But that's not what makes it a special day. I've heard from a little bird that today is your birthday.
It is, man. It is. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
34. Whopping 34.
Incredible. Well, the confetti, you can't see it digitally on your screen if you're listening. You definitely can't see it, but there's confetti flying everywhere. Matt, it's really special to be spending my birthday, or your birthday, with me. I'm so grateful. Let's start with that. Birthdays are a great time to kind of look back and reflect a little bit. If you just turned 34, what was your 33rd year really about? What, if you had to look back and say there was a theme, or there was something you were grappling with or working your way through, what was it?
I think 33 for me, Aaron, was realization. So I think so often we in life get caught in expecting everything we're working on to happen immediately. So we work really hard on our diet, and then we get mad that the scale doesn't change in a week. We work really hard on our knowledge, and then we get really mad that our brain isn't sharper in a week, right? So I think for me, year 33 was about realization, and it was about realization of things that I put in progress and put in place 10 years ago. So when I was 23 years old, I had this 5-year vision that started to paint this beautiful life that we're fortunate to be living today. When I was 23, I started setting goals. When I was 23, I started tracking my habits. And when I was 23, I started living very, very intentionally. And there was 3, 5, 7, 8, 9 years even where I was like, what's this all for? I don't see it. I don't get it. I'm still confused. But for me, last year, or the last year of my life, Aaron, has been really realization. And an incredible mentor of mine, her name is Althea Osborne, happens to be David's mother. She's 89 years old. Has experienced the World War, hiding under tables, been in MI6, been an incredible real estate agent with Keller Williams. And she calls them God winks. And I'm not super religious, although we're exploring that right now with our family. I do believe everybody has some sort of belief, whether it's in themselves, in a higher power, in energy, whatever you could call it. And I think for me, year 33 was realizations with these little God winks, as she refers to them, my mentor refers to them, of just the universe telling me I'm doing the right things. I'm in the right spot. My kids are happy and healthy. My relationship with my wife is great. The business world seems to be going very well. Now, I'm not going to be delusional and think that I could just put it on autopilot and go to sleep, right? I think one of the greatest gifts we have in our life is to understand that no matter where we are on the mountaintop, someone's still chasing us. And so you have two options in life. You can either chase or be chased. And I think that you have to do both. And so, again, for me, year 33 was just about realization. And year 34 for me is all about adding on. So when I was growing up, we played soccer and we played at a very high level. And whenever we would score a goal, one of the dads from the team, the dad of my best man at my wedding, would yell, add on, don't stop now, right? 1-0 is not enough. And so for me, my theme of 2024, or my theme for me, 34 years, is about adding on. Don't settle, don't be satisfied. Game's not over. Just keep adding on, keep doing what you've been doing to get that first goal, or keep doing what you've been doing to experience that success in your life. Put your head down and keep hustling.
What position did you play on the soccer field?
I was actually a goalie, man, 5'6" goalie.
Interesting. Oh man. So, okay. That's cool, because I think this will dovetail nicely. Well, one of the things that I have appreciated about the theme of realization is that you have to have this unwavering commitment to see something that isn't there yet, to keep going when there isn't a tangible result. And I think that gets really difficult. I've definitely been intentional, and I pride myself on the process, if anything, more than the product. But that takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of commitment, and it takes a lot of resolve. What were you doing to make sure that the actions and the inputs didn't subside when you didn't see the results?
I've been fortunate to have some really incredible people in my life. And I've been really fortunate to pay attention to the people in the Gobundance community and almost in a way be raised, like my business version of myself has been raised by this Gobundance community. And they talk about accountability, extreme accountability. So, the way that I made sure that those habits or those actions or those efforts didn't waver, even when I wasn't seeing the result, was I had people in my corner that were saying, like, Matt, you said you wanted to do this. Do you really want to do it? And they were holding me accountable to the vision I had for my life. They were holding me accountable for the plan that I had in my life. And they were celebrating my successes. And they were even more so congratulating my failures, because you don't achieve success without failing, right? Like, you and I just had the privilege of listening to Colin O'Brady. And he said that winners fail the most, or winners lose the most, right? And so, when I was down in a rut or frustrated or feeling sad or feeling, disappointed, I had those people in my corner that knew where I was trying to go or know where I'm trying to go, that said, hey, man, like, dust yourself off, pick yourself up, get over it, right? And I've told people a million times, like, the only difference, Aaron, between a rut and a grave is how long you choose to lay there. And so I was fortunate to have people that wouldn't let me lay there long. And so I've had a bunch of ruts, but I haven't found my grave yet.
Oh, man, we could spend a long time talking about ruts, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I learned that you and I shared is a history in Baltimore. Like to do a lot of research, and
yeah,
we've had a pretty cool relationship just as you stepped in as CEO, and even before then, just kind of touching base. I actually can remember back when Money Club was Ortis Academy. Yeah. I reached out to you and you sent me, like, I don't know, 150 Wealth Can't Wait books from David.
Yeah, I remember.
And that conversation, I don't know that I ever connected that with the next touch point that we had was several years later. But I was in Baltimore then. You spent some time in Baltimore, and it sounds like that was a pivotal piece of your history. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I want to hear what Baltimore did for you.
Yeah, so Baltimore got me lucky. And what I mean by that is so many of us are eager to judge others' success and call it luck. And most of the time it is. But what we underestimate, Aaron, is the ability to put ourselves in a position to get lucky. So Baltimore for me was my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife and amazing mother to our 2 children. She said to me, I'm going to go teach in the inner city schools of DC. And we had just started dating, but we had been friends for a while before that. And I said, great, I'm coming with you. And her response was, I didn't really invite you. It's like, yeah, I don't care, I'm coming with you, right? Like, I knew she was the one, so I was going to follow her. And so I packed everything up and went to Baltimore to follow her. And we spent the summer in Baltimore. And while I was there, we were unsure of where we were going to be located, either Baltimore or Washington, D.C. And while they're close, you definitely don't want to make that drive every day. It's kind of a beating. And so while we were waiting for her placement, I thought, well, I'll just find a way to give back and understand, like, what Baltimore is all about. So I volunteered at a camp for children with incarcerated parents, and got a $500 stipend for like a 2-week camp. It's like nothing, right? And I found it on Craigslist. It could have very well been like a serial killer set me up to, like, take me or whatever. But nonetheless, I met this guy named Pat Hyben, and I got lucky. You could say I got lucky that he was in my group. But what I did after it was I created my own one. And so while we were on the bus on the way to Washington, D.C., I was like, well, tell me about you. And he's like, I'm a New York Times bestselling author. And I could feel my eyes, like, roll into the back of my head, practically rolled down the back of the bus, honestly. I was like, oh, great, here we go. Like, one of these guys, right? I was like, oh, that's cool. Tell me more. And, like, I just remained curious. And ultimately, by remaining curious, Aaron, I took the initiative to buy his book. Even though I had no desire to become a real estate agent, I bought his book, Six Steps to Seven Figures, because regardless of where you're going, every book has a message you can take and apply in your life. And I read his book in a day, and I sent him a Twitter message, I guess you'd call it an X message today, and said, hey, man, I read your book in a day. What would it take to have coffee with you? And I just kept putting myself in front of him. And then we started going on hikes. Then he asked me about myself. And then he made me take this disc. And then he interviewed me. And he's like, hey, I'm building this company. Would you want to help me? And I was like, I don't know anything about podcasting or building a company, but sure, I'd love to help you, right? Because I put myself in a position to get lucky by surrounding myself with good people. And I just intuitively knew that Pat was a good person. And whether or not I was going to be aligned with him forever or not was uncertain. But I knew that it was somebody I could learn from. I knew it was somebody I could grow with. And I knew it was a mentor that I could have in my corner that would help me along the way. And so for me, Aaron, like Baltimore has been all about like helping me get lucky, like putting me in the right place at the right time to take advantage of an opportunity, because that job with Pat parlayed to volunteering at one of the first ever Gobundance events in Orlando, Florida, which led to me volunteering at another Gobundance event in Tahoe, which led to me meeting David Osborne, which led to David asking, hey, what would it take to have you in my world? Which led to my wife and I moving to Austin, Texas, which led to me helping run David's world, which now has led full circle to me now running Gobundance's CEO. So like, that was that seed that was planted 10 years ago at a camp for children with incarcerated parents found on Craigslist that has led full circle to me today, being fortunate and honored to lead Gobundance and stand in front of that room and lead such an incredible group of people.
That might be the craziest Craigslist story I've heard. I've heard some pretty interesting ones, like not all of them so glamorous.
No.
But we'll send Craigslist a couple bucks as a thank you.
Yeah.
Matt, I know that you've been on a lot lately. I know that people are attracted to your story, especially about curiosity, and something that has been very unique in what I've gotten to see in your history. And this is why I asked you what position you played. The idea of being a goalie to me is a really interesting nugget here, because the goalie is a totally different position. In my opinion, I also played soccer all the way through college and coached for 12 years. The goalie is a totally different player on the field. The rules are different, skill set's different, the mindset's different. But you're defending a square, a rectangle technically. And that defense is something I've almost seen slowly through the work that you've done. You have like a real passion for standing up for the little guy. And you talked about it with Adam about this woman and daughter were fighting and kind of stepping in the middle. You mentioned being on the sideline at soccer games and hearing parents go at it and like stepping in. And I just wonder where that comes from, because that takes a tremendous amount of courage and almost requires you to set down the curiosity and just make an action to like be the goalie.
Yeah.
What is that a mentality? Is that a piece of your history? Like what brings that out? Like, I'm going to defend the little guy here.
I was a little guy, man. Like, no pun intended. I was a 5 foot, probably when I started in high school, 5 foot, 5.5 inch goalie. Now, if you know anything about soccer, like the little guy is never the goalie, right? Like maybe they're the right mid, maybe they're the left mid, like maybe they're the real quick forward with good ball skills, but they're not the goalie. But growing up, my dad played goalie. I fell in love with it. I was fortunate to have some really good coaches, some really good peers, some really good mentors. But I will never forget, like, we lost in the state finals my junior year, and a college coach came up to me and said, if you were a foot taller, you'd be my number one recruit. And he walked away and never talked to me again. And so like where that comes from for me, Aaron, is like, I still am the little guy. Like I'm the guy that dropped out of college. I'm the guy that nobody thought had a chance to succeed. I'm the guy that people still think like has no chance to succeed. But I found the courage to believe in myself. And so why I tend to stand up for the little guys, because I want them to find that courage for themselves too. Because I can't be there every waking second. But if that mom leaving the monster truck rally with her son, if that 4-year-old or 3-year-old, whatever the age it was, like doesn't have to remember my name, doesn't have to remember my face, but just has to remember that feeling of what it was like to stand up for themselves. Like if they can remember that and apply it in the rest of their lives will be exponentially better. And so like, I just have this burning desire to like continue to help the little guy, because candidly, Aaron, I still am the little guy. Like I'm a nobody from a small town in Wisconsin that has just been finding the way or making the way to what I've achieved so far and on the path I'm going. And there's still haters and there's still doubters. I mean, what Coach Prime or Deion Sanders, he says, just keep collecting those receipts. And that's what I did along the way. I kept collecting those receipts. And I had amazing people, my parents, my wife, my in-laws, my sister. I've had amazing people in my corner that believed in the little guy. But at the end of the day, I had to find that belief inside of myself. And so I want others to find that belief inside of themselves too.
Yeah, as a guy picked on in high school, man, in middle school, I can remember really dark moments, like really heavy moments of like, am I ever gonna make it? Am I ever gonna fit in? And I think it takes a lot of work to build up courage, to build up an outer shell that's tough. But I also think there's an inner core that, because of that experience, makes you more connectable because you recognize pain. Is that something that you would say is still a strength of yours, being able to recognize when someone is in pain?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife would tell you I have low empathy, and I do for like the general day-to-day stuff. But like when I see somebody in pain, I mean, yesterday's a great example. We were at the mall. I had to get some new pants, and I'm like the most anti-shopper there is. Like I procrastinate as long as I possibly can. And so my wife's like, we have to get you new pants. I'm like, all right, let's get new pants. And so like there we are in American Eagle, because of course I have to buy the cheapest jeans I can possibly find.
So many questions about this.
So there we are in American Eagle. And this lady comes up to me with a backpack full of candy. And she says, we're raising money for my son's basketball game. The candy is free, but are you willing to make a donation? And like, I didn't even think. I just reached in my wallet, handed her $100 bill and moved on with my day. I said, I don't even want the candy. Like, have a great day. And my wife's like, we totally just got scammed. And I was like, yeah, but here's the thing. She needed that $100 more than us if she scammed us. And so let her have it. Like, if that's what she needs, let her have it. And if she has to use this shell of, I need to raise money for my kid's basketball, I mean, more power to her. I have no idea what she's going through, but I knew in that moment I could help, whether it was for her son's basketball or not. And so I just didn't even think. I just took out the money, handed her $100. And then my wife and I laughed about it for 15, 20 minutes about how, you know, she looked at her son. I looked at her son. I'm like, oh, you play basketball? He's like, yeah, I play basketball. I'm like, yeah, we just got scammed. Absolutely. But like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change my life. And if she had to create that story and to provide for her family, the more power to her. Like, I'm not going to judge that because I don't know what she's going through. So, you know, I think, you know, you're absolutely spot on. And like, I still have an ability to see the pain or the need inside of people. And I think as life gets busy, we all have that ability, but we all choose to turn the volume down on that ability because we're just too busy. We got too much stuff going on. I got my kids to worry about. I got my job to worry about. I got this call. I got that call. And what I try to do is always stay grounded in the moment, slow myself down just a little bit and go like, what can I do in this moment to solve the problem? Now, I'm not taking the basketball team under my wing and sponsoring them for a year. Like it was a quick fix. I'm not delusional about that. But I didn't let the chaos of life. I let my intuition take over and just help whoever was in need.
Interesting. How would you define intuition as someone that doesn't know how to trust it yet?
Yeah, I would tell you that I would define intuition as that 7-year-old kid inside of you. And I would say that every single one of us knows how to trust it. The problem, Aaron, is most of us are taught how to ignore it. And so we have to take those stories of how to ignore your intuition that school, society, friends, family, whoever puts on us to try to protect us. It's not from a bad place. It's to try to protect us. But we need to take those stories and peel them away. And underneath those stories, we'll rediscover our ability to trust our intuition. Like everybody knows how. We all know how. Now, we might burn our hand once, but we all know how to recognize a hot stove. We all know how to put that, into practice once we burn ourselves once. We all know what happens if we fall off the countertop. And then our intuition takes over and guides us the rest of the way, right? Like, be careful if you fall, this is going to hurt. So maybe don't climb the ladder. Maybe don't jump out of the plane, whatever it looks like, right? And so we all know how to trust it. It's just, do you have the ability, or more importantly, the desire to shed the stories that we're telling ourselves that mask our intuition and try to teach us to ignore it?
So good, man. I really appreciate that definition. I've not heard intuition described that way. And I very much align with, in order to connect with that, we have to shed stuff. So it's a good segue to also ask, if you've had this little guy, this chip on your shoulder almost mentality, well, you've now created a lot of things over the course of your last 10 years, from 23 to 34. And in that process, no doubt, have had to come face to face with little version of you and maybe teenage version of you and all these stories that get kind of clogged up in there. When I think about being the underdog, which I love that as an edge, it's so powerful to have an underdog mentality. And also it can be a really addictive thing to like keep putting yourself in situations where you gotta be the underdog over and over and over. What are some of the stories that you've had to shed specifically, like from when you were younger, that taught you how to be and taught you how to live and taught you what to dream of?
Well, I think that the largest one was like the community I grew up in, the way I was raised. It wasn't big on taking huge risks, like go fly outside of the coop and see what's possible, right? And honestly, if it weren't for Melissa, my wife, saying I'm moving to DC, I'd probably still be in that same community. Like, I did not have the courage by myself to take the risks I've taken in my life, but I've found the courage through my partnership and relationship with Melissa to take more chances, to take more risks. Probably the one that I can resonate with the most that just pops to mind immediately is like this story of you have to have a college degree in order to achieve success. Like, look, I think a college degree is an incredible key that helps you open some locked doors, but you or I can figure out how to unlock those doors. It's all about relationships. It's all about hard work. It's all about service. And so I think I had to shed this story of, you're not smart enough because you don't have a college degree. They're not going to listen to you because you don't have a college degree. You can't be a CEO because you don't have a college degree. Oh, this family office world you're in? Yeah, you didn't go to Harvard. Like, you don't belong in this place. And so I've had to shed those stories. And you're right. I love being the underdog. Like, I have a shirt that says respect the underdog because, like, I want to be respected because I was counted down. I was counted out. I still probably am by many. And I love it because at the end of the day, the only person I owe it to is me. I have to prove it to me that I'm worth it. I have to prove it to me that I'm worthy. And I have an incredible, support system in my wife and my family and my sister, and my in-laws, like my friends, like all these incredible people, coaches, mentors, peers, like all these incredible people that are like, yo, man, you can do this. And like those stories still pop up, Aaron. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, there's days where I'm like, man, who am I to be doing this? Like, we're just in Stowe, Vermont, and I'm getting ready in the back of the room for this event. And I have 160 entrepreneurs who all paid, spent time in their calendars to come listen to the agenda that I had put together and trust me to take them through a process that I thought would help them leave better men than they showed up with. And I'm standing in the back of the room and I'm like, man, who am I to be doing this? I'm wearing the mic. I've got, the pack on my thigh. I'm like, the clicker in my hand. I'm like, man, who am I? But what I've always done well at is I've always said, why not me? And I learned that from David Osborne at 23 years old. Someone's going to be on this stage leading these people. So why not me? So I take that, who am I? And I immediately replace it with why not me? Like, not a couple minutes later, not a couple days later, like as soon as the question or the thought or the idea comes into my mind of who am I, I'm immediately combating that with why not me? Why not me? And the other thing that, Colin touched on that I feel like I've lived my entire life is I've been very good at inserting the word yet at the end of my sentences. So many of us tell us what we're not. So many of us tell us what we can't. And I do the same thing. I just add an extra word that says yet. So, I can't lead a group yet. I can't facilitate an event yet. And then I start to figure out, who do I need to meet or what do I need to learn in order to be that version of myself that can lead the room, that can facilitate the meetings, that can raise 2 children, that can be an incredible husband, that can focus on my health, that can juggle all these things. And, you alluded to it a little bit. I think a lot of it happens not through addition, but through subtraction or deletion. We have this tendency, and you and I were talking about it before the call, to believe that the only way to live a bigger life is to add more things. But that's wrong. The only way to live a bigger life is to live a more intentional life. And the only way to live with intentionality is to delete things, to delete the negative influences, to delete social media off your phone, to stop watching the Kardashians and listen to incredible podcasts like this. Like, you've got to delete, and then you've got to get clarity around what you actually need in your life to become that version of yourself you're trying to become.
Yeah, that process is painful, man. I hear in the way you talk too that there's a lot of awareness that you've built over time, that you can hear your thoughts. One of my contrarian beliefs has been that much to one of the first things you shared was that it's good to be chased up the mountain and to chase something. And one of those beliefs that I've really worked to create is minding that the underdog is important, and also being okay being the overdog, which is that just sounds really weird, but
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
But in some ways, one of the patterns that I've had was, okay, I'm always going to put myself in a position where I'm the underdog. Therefore, I've got a hell of a climb. I got to hike, man. I'm going to put myself in all this hardship, and it's going to be difficult all the time. And I can remember back to using soccer as a great metaphor. There were games where you certainly cut your teeth and you definitely get better because you're just getting squished. And then there were other times where it is awesome to just come in and dominate and be the best in the room. And I think in personal development, there is a lot of like, hey, be the dumbest in the room. Hey, make sure your axe is being sharpened by people that have sharper axes. And also there's this other side of it where we have to find wins. We have to find a way to let the beast out and like truly dominate. So how are you navigating the valve release that is, this is my lane and I'm the best in it, so your ego has a place to not always feel like the underdog?
Yeah, so I know this is your podcast, but can I ask you a question?
Fire away. This is what makes it fun.
What if you change the definition of underdog as you've defined it for the last 30 plus years of your life? So like, that's what I do.
Okay, help me understand. I love this.
So you're saying the underdog has a harder climb. They have to climb further. They have to climb faster. I'm telling you, the underdog finds the way or makes the way to do it easier. They just aren't looked at by society. They aren't looked at by the public as the overdog. Your word, I love the overdog, right? Public's perception is bullshit. The only perception that matters is my own reality. And in my own reality, I'll tell people all the time, I'm the underdog, because it puts their guard down. Nice. They turn a blind eye to me. They ignore me a little bit. But in my head, I'm not the underdog anyone, man. Like I already know what I am, right? So, I have this confidence, I have this belief, because I know unequivocally I won't be taller than you. I probably won't be better looking than you, but I guarantee you I will outwork you. And nice. I know hard work beats talent, especially when talent's not willing to work. And so often talent isn't willing to work. So like the greatest gift I was given was not being talented. Some people say that's an underdog. No. That was like the greatest blessing ever, because it forced me to work harder. And so that's how I deal with it. I just changed my definition of the underdog.
I love that, man. I'm a big fan of making things easy, and to couple that with hard work, right? It doesn't have to be hard, but let's work hard and make it easy. Then it's work harder, work smarter, both at the same time. Man, I love that definition, dude. The thing that sports taught me, and it sounds like this might be true for you, especially as a goalie, goalies have to have a tremendous amount of agility. You have to be able to track the ball. You also have to mind space and time things very well. And you're the last line. So your cost of mistakes are really high compared to, let's say, a forward that doesn't have the same kind of risk. And what I appreciate about sports is you are often playing with risk in mind. And if you grew up in a place that doesn't tell you to take big risks, that told you to stay here, stay put, stay small, you've not only exemplified that on the soccer field where like you're minding risk, but now your world is much, much, much different. Now your world of risk is certainly financial. You lead a community full of people. If you don't know about Gobundance, please check them out. Even if you don't qualify for Gobundance, you might qualify for Gobundance Emerge. There's so many really cool things happening in that space. But this also exists with your pursuit in health and fitness and changing that. You've got a lot of risk on the table. I know you just had shoulder surgery too.
Yeah.
So a lot of risk is now like a part of your world. And I think that when we start taking risks, the world says you're taking big risks, but we kind of learn to insulate that a little bit so that the delta is not as large. what have you had to say no to so that you can keep taking risk and still grow without knowing that, like, if it all goes south, like, I'm going to end up back on the street in Baltimore?
Yeah, so like the first thing I would want to address with that question is like, again, the way that I found success in life is just to change the definition. And so when you talk about risk, that was something I was like very conscious of. And up until last summer, when I had the privilege of meeting with a very incredible family office up in the Midwest, I like couldn't comprehend risk. Like it just, I like was afraid of it. I like couldn't like fathom like risk, especially financial risk. I like my actions. Okay, cool. I can make up for that. But like money, like, I don't know. I just don't know how to think about this. And so what do? I asked my mentor, I asked these people I'm in a room with, hey, how do you all think about risk? And the CEO is probably 70, 72. He like kicks back in his chairs, like one of those like big, like comfortable office chairs that like reclines. And he starts kind of rocking and he's laughing. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. Like, this is when he sees me to the door and like says, you're an idiot. Stay away from me. And he's like, risk, huh? Like, yeah, risk. It's like, Matt, risk is just a lack of knowledge or a lack of controls. If you have the knowledge or you have the controls, you don't take risks. You just make decisions. I was like, whoa, like mind exploded, right? Like, not only is that great from an investing perspective to have that mindset, but apply that to everything in your life. Anytime you thought you were taking a risk, you either probably didn't know what you needed to know about the situation and or you didn't have control. So I'll give you an example. In 2022, I decided to ride a bull. No, excuse me, 2021. 2021, I decided to ride a bull. And people said, actually, it was at the Gobundance Emerge event that you led and facilitated in our fireside chat that helped connect the dots to make this happen. But people ask me, like, how do you continue to push yourself? And I would say, like, how do I get comfortable with risk? And it's like, I put myself in a position to feel uncomfortable and then either gain the knowledge I need or gain the controls I need to not have to take a risk. So with bull riding, now I was too lazy to figure out the knowledge or too undisciplined to do all the bull riding lessons in classes. So I was like, I'm just going to take the risk. And I literally took the risk. But when you take risks like that, and then you apply or layer in this concept of knowledge and controls, it no longer feels like you're taking risks in life because there's no investment that I'm going to make. There's nothing I'm going to do with the Gobundance community that's going to be scarier than the bull, and that I'm not willing to find the information or the knowledge I need and or have the right controls in place to protect myself, to protect the members, to protect the investment, to protect the capital, etc. So for me, it's all about knowledge and control. And you could go down a deep, dark path of control because a lot of highly successful, hard-charging people are control freaks. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at how to mitigate risk, take control. Now you're just betting on yourself. You're not taking a risk.
This is great because I do think that there is a very warped sense of control. And what I've noticed happens often is in the pursuit of more at the very beginning of our growth curve, we have to control as much as possible. And that's what propels us. It's like the first fuselage on a rocket ship. And eventually, you almost have to jettison those things because you're dependent on a team. You're dependent on people. And like your whole world becomes so much more interdependent than independent. And if you have that control belief or binding, then it kind of suffocates you. Yeah. And you've got a very unique world where I imagine a good majority of it is this community of Gobundance that you're leading. And in doing that, this idea of control starts to get really mixed into what is leadership and what isn't, because leading and listening is often the release of a lot of control. So how have you changed your definition? Because that sounds like a recurring theme of what it means to lead. And how do you think about community where you got to have some kind of guardrails, right? If we're going to lead a movement, then we need to have some kind of guardrails. We're going to take a stand. We need a line to draw. But you're also trying to make sure that you're inclusive of others and you're listening and, going back to when you were in golf locker rooms, just paying attention and like the information's there. How do you then issue the right amount of control?
That's a great question. And I'll go back to, like, again, it's all about the people you surround yourself with. And so many people listening to this, Aaron, probably going like, man, this guy just got so lucky. He's surrounded himself with these incredible entrepreneurs. Like, I can't be that. I call bullshit. Like, every single one of us can put Elon Musk in our ears right now because of podcasts, Audible books, YouTubes, etc. Like, proximity is power. And so when it comes to the control concept, I was fortunate to be around David Osborne. Now, this is a guy who has 35 plus businesses, 200 plus investments, is kind of going at a million miles an hour and was a control freak. But what I learned from him was like, look, I can control, but by controlling, I'm probably going to stay small because I only have so many hours in a day. And so he, through his actions, showed me what it's like to let go of that control, showed me what it's like from a leadership perspective. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but like, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And so few of us use those in proportion. So I'm not afraid to listen to people. Now, does that mean I'm going to do what they say? No. But 99% of the population just wants to be heard. They don't really care what you actually do. They just want to know that you heard them. They just want somebody to listen. Now, our time is valuable, and every single one of us have an hourly value on our time, whether we're, $8 an hour or $8,000 an hour. We all have a number. But at the end of the day, listening is free. Like, it doesn't, yes, it costs us our time a little bit, but like, at the end of the day, it doesn't cost you anything to say, sure, I'd love to hear you out on your opinion, and take 5 minutes of your time to listen to somebody. And so for me, like, when I think through leadership, I think a stronger word is stewardship. And like, I look at myself as like, the driver of the Titanic. Like, yeah, I'm sitting in the chair. Maybe it's a bad example because they hit an iceberg and crashed and they all died. But, like, I think of myself as the captain of this giant ship. And I can't possibly run down to the engine room, turn the valves, run back up, make sure I'm on the right course, run down and make sure that everybody's fed under deck, run back up, make sure the weather's okay. Like, I'm just one person. But what I can do is I can surround myself with incredibly talented people that are really passionate about the engine room or about serving the food or about checking the weather. And I can give them autonomy over their role as long as I give them some framework of where we're going. And so David taught me, you lay the bumpers down and you let anything inside those guardrails be what it's going to be. And you let them learn from it. You let them grow from it. So when people want to run with control, by all means, take it. Because that's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to grow. Now, we talked about the lines. We agreed to those lines. So let's not cross those lines. But at the end of the day, surround yourself with talented people. Trust that you can surround yourself with talented people, and then give them the opportunity to run towards your vision. And if you do that, you don't need control. You'll actually find that you don't want control, because all your control is going to do is it's going to pull you backward, further away from that vision, slow you down.
Yeah, to me, that is getting out of your own way, right? That we got great people. They can go past us. We set the guardrails and we go. I want to go back to the idea of a control freak and working in that space, because a memory popped up and we might be able to extract some real nuggets here. Did you ever watch House of Cards?
A little bit, a couple episodes.
So based in DC, if you haven't watched the show, it's a interesting show, but there's this scene, I think it might have been, much of House of Cards was filmed in Baltimore, so it aligns with our history too, but there's this scene where the president is talking with Frank Underwood, who is played by Kevin Spacey. And there's just a lot of chilling moments in this overall series. But one of the things that Kevin Spacey's character says is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do to align with a man this powerful and strong is say no. And his defiance is sort of seen as the first move to win the allegiance of the president. That the way to win sometimes is by disagreeing. And I think for some reason that scene popped in my head. I think that often when we're in the space of a control freak, when we know someone has worked very hard to build something, maybe that's an investor or a partner or a friend or someone we care about, that the way we show love or the way we show allegiance is just, we just say yes. And in many instances, that is the most damaging thing we can possibly do. And sometimes we have to say no. Now, I love the word leadership instead of stewardship. But if someone is in a position where they're around working with, partnering with someone that has immediate control, how do they get the courage to say no to someone that has their hands on the reins so tightly? How did you do it?
Questions. So I don't think you have to always say no, especially when you're not confident in the moment. I think you just have to ask more powerful questions to let that leader self-realize or self-actualize why it's a no, not a yes. Now, over time, you build up trust, and then you maybe have some ability, more confidence, most importantly, to say no. But I think you're spot on. Like, we don't want to surround ourselves with yes men. Like, what good is that? That's not gonna do anything for us. So at the end of the day, like, you want people around you that are gonna say no, whether that be through really good questions or the actual sentence no. And like, people forget that that's a full sentence, like no, period, done, no explanation needed, like
Yeah.
no, right? My kids definitely don't recognize that yet, but at the end of the day, like, I think if you're struggling to find the courage to say no, give yourself some grace, give yourself some space, and use questions to allow you to bridge that gap to trust, to allow you to bridge that gap to confidence, and use the questions as a way to help people lead themselves to a no. And over time, it will give you the credibility to be able to say no, and most importantly, the confidence.
So good, man. So good. Yeah, I love no. And I've had a hard time getting proficient with that. If I think of, bro, it's the hardest. Maybe this is how you feel too, but I think the reason it's hard is that if I zoom out on my life, the thing that got me really far was saying yes to things like that no one else would ever have said yes to. And now I'm in a position where if I keep that pattern alive, I'll drown. Like, I literally will just have too much that doesn't bear fruit, or I'll be distracted, or I'll be unfocused, which is an important part of growth is learning to say no. And getting out of my own way has meant saying no way more frequently, but it's uncomfortable. So I'm curious how you have grown in saying no and how you deal with it now. And do you like grimace before you send the text? Do you make it polite instead of saying no, like you just mentioned? Or, what are some tactics you use to be very good at those boundaries?
Man, I hate to even admit this, but I delegate the easy no's and I keep the hard no's. So if it's, hey, would you give me 15 minutes of your time? I'm from Kenya and I'm looking for somebody to sponsor me. Like, look, somebody needs to sponsor that person. All amazing, but that's not on my time right now. So I delegate the no to my team. I'm like, y'all already know where my time is most valuable. You already know where I'm focused. That's family first, then business. So, like, I let my team handle most of the no's. The hard no's, though, I don't delegate. And what I actually learned this trick from Jesse Itzler. The way you say no, especially if it's a hard no, is you make it a rememberable no. So if I have, let's say, some Gobundance guys that are in town, they're like, hey, Matt, would you come out to dinner tonight? Well, when I look at my priority list, first and foremost is family. So like, the answer is no. Then second is my health. I want my health to be in line next morning. If I go out, that's not going to work. So that's a no. Then I look at, like, what do I have tomorrow for work? Work's important to me. So that's a no. So I say, hey guys, I can't make it tonight. And I leave it at that. But then I'll go and I'll like buy the appetizer, or I'll buy the dessert, or I'll buy the drinks, because then the no becomes remembered. Like, it's not like, oh, that guy just is too good for us. It's like, no, guys, I wish I could have been there. Sorry I couldn't make it, but here's the drinks. Here's the dinner. Next time it's on me, whatever it is, right? And like, all of us have the ability to do that. Like, it might take me 15 minutes to call the restaurant on my way to my daughter's dance recital or dance practice or swim lessons or soccer game and say, hey, my friends are there. The guy looks like X, Y, and Z. It's 4 guys. Could you please add this much money on my credit card and let them know, like, I just send my apologies for not being present. And all of a sudden you get this text from that same group you said no to going like, holy cow, dude, that was so thoughtful. Like, can't wait for you to join us next time. Like, thank you so much. Right. Like, and so again, like, I'm all about, there are so many successful people in this world that have already made all the mistakes that you and I are trying to make on a daily basis. Just go learn from them. So I listened to a podcast. Jesse talked about, delegating the easy no's, keeping the hard no's. I keep the hard no's. He talked about sending this stuff to the restaurants. I was like, if it worked for him, it's got to work for me. And the worst case is it pisses my friends off and I bought them a free drink. Like, okay, cool. Like, sweet, right? So that's how I handle the no's is I delegate the easy ones and handle the hard ones. Honestly, dude, no is nearly as hard as a 4-year-old, no to a 4-year-old in Target about a new toy and the meltdown that transpires, right? So like, once you go through that war, everything else seems easy. Like everything else is fine.
I know some adults that throw similar tantrums, but
yeah, unfortunately,
another story, another time. Dude, recently I was on a Delta plane, and I kid you not, I'm in 2A, and Jesse Itzler sits behind me in 3A, and I just like didn't even know what to do. I was such a poor way to introduce myself, but I reached out to him on the podcast to like book him on this podcast. I haven't gotten a memorable no yet. I just got no response.
Yeah,
but that's a no. I'm just gonna, yeah, thanks. I'm just gonna build this thing up and call him again and figure out how to make it work. But I love the idea of making no a more common practice. I do think that the further you grow and the more you are responsible for, that has to become the biggest word in your vocabulary or the most common word in your vocabulary. And I don't know, I've definitely grappled with it over time.
Yeah, the interesting thing I'll add real quick, man, is like so Jesse hasn't responded to you yet. You can do one of two things. Like I was being smart as saying that's a no, and you can accept that no, or you could say, hey, I'm not going to accept the no. And the way to not accept the no isn't to continually email him, right? Because it's just going to get lost in the noise, and now it's going to be this annoying person. But I truly believe, Aaron, that service is the Trojan horse to whatever you're looking for in life. So if you're looking to have Jesse Itzler on your podcast, my question to you would be, what do you need to do in order to serve Jesse and his goals and missions such that he repays the favor by being on your podcast? And if all of a sudden you start to look at life that way, you now have control of your destiny rather than letting his assistant who responds to his email control the future of him being on the Get Out of Your Own Way show.
Yeah, this is great. I love that line too. Service is the Trojan horse to success. Okay, so as we wind down, here's a question that I think for the givers, I think you're a giver. I would stamp you with that mentality and energy. For the givers, the no is a really important thing. And giving is embedded in who we are. So I'm a big believer in like overserve, overdeliver, offer free, give. And that can have its own dark side. It's also important to find the places where you can give, where it's valued and it's respected and it's cherished. So as you have given and given and given over a long period of time, 11 years, how have you learned to discern between the wrong place to give and the right place to give?
Man, I just give. Who am I to judge the right versus the wrong? Like, I'm not trying to play some albeit powerful figure like God, right? I think you're right in saying that there can be moments where giving can have a very dark energy. But what I've discovered thus far in my journey is that that dark period is because of the expectations I put on the giving. It wasn't because of the giving. It was the expectations that I put on the giving. If I do this, they will do that. Remove those expectations, the giving still feels good. The giving still feels powerful. So, I just give. Now, I've got a limit. Like I only have so much money. I only have so much time. But at the end of the day, like I'll take 5 minutes for anybody out of my day because I never know either what word they're going to say that could change my life or what word I could say that will change theirs. And again, who am I to determine what good or bad situations are for giving? So I don't try to label anything. I really am focused on detaching from the labels I give things more than paying attention to where I give. And what I mean by that is the expectations that go around the giving are much more important to shed than the judgment of should I give to this or should I not? Just give and use awareness to help you decide if giving there in the future is the right move for you and those people or those things or those places or not in the future. And each of us have the ability to make that decision through the awareness we can gain.
So good, man. So good. I appreciate the comment about detaching the labels for giving. I think that's a beautiful thing. You know,
Yeah.
as I think about this, we kind of started with the goalie and how you're the last line of defense, but in a way, you're also the first line of giving. You're the first line of distribution
Yeah.
there at the back too,
Right.
which is kind of
That's
cool
right. I
to.
mean, and that's spot on, right? Like you will never see a game won where it's like the goalie won us the game. It's like, no, Matt didn't, like Matt didn't score. Matt might have stopped the shot, but somebody scored. Like, I don't know this for a fact, but I think if you look at all of the I can't remember what the award's called, but the gold ball winners, like the
Yeah, the
Messi's and
ball on door.
Ronaldo, right?
Yep.
I don't think a goalie's ever won it because they're not the ones
Yeah, I
with
don't
all the
think so either.
fame. They're not the ones with all the fame. They don't win the game, but they absolutely can lose the game. And you're spot on in saying like that goalie is the first line of distribution, is the first person to decide, great, I received the ball, stopped it. Now where are we going to go on attack? And you get to kind of call the shots from that perspective. But you're not going to get any of the credit.
Well, so I just looked this up. There was one goalie that won the ball on door in 1956.
Wow.
Which is a long, long, long time ago. But nonetheless, I think your point is still valid because that happens every year.
I was almost right.
Point is still valid. Matt, I think that people have a lot to gain by paying attention to you, by watching your story, watching your journey, and listening to all that you have to share. You mind telling them a little bit about where they can find you as we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, man. Like, look, I'm just trying to be a conduit to the knowledge and experiences I have. I'm just trying to give them to everybody that I possibly can, because through giving them, I sharpen myself and make sure I hold myself accountable to be in alignment with my work. I'm on like all the social media channels, Facebook, doing a bunch on Instagram right now, which is mattking.atx. You can follow the Gobundance community. I'm all over the Gobundance community and helping kind of fulfill that vision and mission. And then, man, if there's anything I can do to help anybody, like I give my email out constantly. It's just matt@gobundance.com. And if there's anything I can do to help anybody on the journey, if you feel like you're in a rut, if you feel stuck, like reach out. And the beautiful thing, Aaron, and I'll probably regret saying this, but 99% of people don't reach out. So I can just keep giving the email and it doesn't matter. But every once in a while, that one person reaches out. And if I can just help them navigate something, maybe change a definition, change a label, shed a label, whatever it is, I mean, it's my honor, man. So I really appreciate everything you're doing. I really appreciate the role you've played on my journey. You don't probably always know it, but I watch and I listen very closely, and I watch how you show up. I watch how you lead. I watch how you navigate challenges. I watch how you pour into your clients, into your community, into the fan abundance community. And I just want to thank you for having me on the show, man. It's an honor.
Mutual, man. This was great. I really appreciate. I have a page full of notes. If you've listened to this, give Matt a follow. I know you will get more and more and more from this. He has a lot of really bright things coming your way that I'm not at liberty to discuss publicly, but I can tell you that publicly some cool things are going to happen in the next couple of months coming from Matt King. I'll end today's conversation with a very warm happy birthday. I hope you were showing a lot of love today.
Appreciate you.
And that people respect your boundaries and leave you alone.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for all you're doing.
Thanks for being here, Matt.